right, I am very honored today to introduce our speaker, Dr. Carol Carnes. Now, she said that she just retired from her pulpit ministry after 26 years. And as we know, when our ministers retire, they just don't fade away. They find their passion in other areas, and I'm so grateful that she's going to share this with us today. As a member of the Association of Global New Thought Leadership Council since 1998, she has participated in 3 synthesis dialogues with the Honorable Dalai Lama and other world religious and civic visionaries. Honored with other AGNT leaders for their work with the Season for Nonviolence. I know we do that. How many people are familiar with the Season for Nonviolence? Yes, it's a wonderful program. And the AGNT leaders for their work. She was inducted into the Martin Luther King Board of Preachers at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. She has been featured writer in Creative Thought and Science Mind magazines. And she is the author of The Way In, and that's the book she's going to be signing out in the lobby, so you can pick that up today and have her sign it for you. I know it's so wonderful when you take a book off the shelf and somebody opens and says, "Oh my God, do you know her?" And you say, "Yes, I do." Selections from her daily blog, Living Consciously. Dr. Carol actively supports the role of this teaching in the future of spiritual dialogue and the world. She believes, as Dr. Holmes did, that liberating the religion from superstition and dogma will be a major factor in bringing about the great shift in human consciousness that will open the door to co-create an awakened world. Oh, I'm part of that. You guys part of that?
Yeah.
Wonderful. My pleasure, Dr. Carol Carnes.
Good morning. That's a really old picture. I was cute. I wonder where they got that. I haven't even seen that one in years. It's so wonderful to be here. It's been years since I spoke here. It was when Dr. Dennis was minister. And, of course, Sue, I think at that time you were in Edmonton and I was in Calgary and came to visit. It's wonderful to see you, too. Great to be here. This is a good-looking crowd. Yeah, good-looking people. I always start with a compliment. You know what I love about the New Thought community is that we're all in this together. We're kind of on a journey together. And when we do meet in places like Asilomar or our other conferences, we're able to share our stories with one another, our progress, and we're always applying these principles. I know every one of you is a serious student of the science of mind, aren't you? Yes. Good. Smart choice. But if you're like me, every once in a while you do succumb to the easy way. Every once in a while you succumb, perhaps, to those book titles that promise you prosperity, 1, 2, 3. The ABCs of a perfect relationship. 3 days to no belly fat. That's the one I always go for. Doesn't work. But you know, those books sell because people are looking for a quick fix. And sometimes we fall for it. Well, I thought I'd get on that bandwagon a little bit myself and bring to you 6 magic words that could change your life. Now, I don't say will change your life. I say could. Could change your life if we get into the essence of what these words mean and apply them to our own inner life and allow ourselves to be shifted in the process. So these are 6 magic words that could change your life. So are you ready? Yeah. If we had a drum, we'd say, drum roll, please. Ta-da! Thank you very much. I love men when they do what you tell them to, don't you? Anyway. Okay, now you got a taste of who I really am. The first 3 words of the 6 magic words that could change your life are up until now. Up until now is the only rational way to look at your life. It's the only sensible way to look at your past or any experience you've ever had. let's do some examples. Now, this isn't necessarily my up until now, but it might be some of yours. Up until now, I have been struggling financially. Anybody relate? Up until now, my relationships have all ended fairly badly. Up until now, my health has been kind of good and up and down. Up until now, I've had that substance abuse problem. But you see, up until now, it's just that. And when we don't ascribe any meaning to it, it has no power. It's just an observation. So up until now, I may have been depressed or lonely or unhealthy. Up until now. Now, the next three magic words that could change a life are from now on. From now on is the only rational way to speak about our future. It's not wishful thinking. It's a declarative statement. From now on, I am living in the flow of abundance, for example. From now on, my relationships are mutually supportive, respectful, fun, loving. From now on, I love my life. From now on, I love being me. Now, those are declarations that can arise if we take advantage of the space between up until now and from now on. So, up until now is here, from now on is here, and there's this vast open space in between. And that vast open space is the self. It is self-consciousness, self-awareness. It is the way in, which is the title of my book, which I know you will rush into the bookstore to buy immediately after service. This space is where everything happens. I stayed at the home of Reverend Dr. Dennis and his lovely wife Diane last night, and I saw framed, and I know Diane framed this because I'm sure Dennis wouldn't have done it, but it was a quote from, well, because it was your quote. And it said, I'll paraphrase because I don't remember exactly, the power is in the moment. Creation happens here. It happens now. So where we're in that space between up until now and from now on, there is this vast open space of possibility. And in between that is the self, which rests in its own potential. So up until now, from now on, we want to spend the bulk of our time here, just resting in our own potential. So I'm going to give you some how-tos for that today. How to get from there, how to get from here to there. That's what we want to know. Is it really that simple? Something has to happen in that open space. Something has to happen before we can make the kind of shift that initiates a real change in our personal experience. You could call it a healing if you want, but a real change, a real leap from what was up until now to what we want to experience from now on. So think of yourself as driving along in your car, and you come to a red light. Now maybe you want to save some gas, so you shift into neutral. Well, the car's idling, but the power and energy are still available, aren't they? It's all there. Everything is ready to take you forward as soon as you slip out of neutral and into that higher gear again. And this is a metaphor for what we're speaking about when we talk about giving ourselves some silence, giving ourselves some time to experience being without doing. You could call it meditation, but it doesn't even have to be that formal. But to sit in that open space between the remembrance and the projection, to just be conscious of being right now. I can't even convey how powerful that is. It is just amazingly powerful and powerfully healing. That's where it all starts, right there. So we can't stay in potential forever, though. You know, you can't sit there and idle in your car. You have to shift gears and move forward. Well, it's not a bad place to be, though, for a while. But we have to move out of inertia, as it were. So we gather momentum from the sheer non-action of sitting. We gather momentum. You know, when I first started meditating in 1975, one of the teachers explained it this way, and I will never forget it, and I use it all the time. He said, it's like this. When you have a target and you have a bow and arrow, you have to pull the bow back with the arrow, and you have to let it sit there, gathering energy, resting in its own potential. And then when you let go of it, it flies right to the mark. Well, that is a great analogy to thought, that we take it away from the arena of action, we draw it back into the self, where all thought originates in this field of consciousness, and we let it gather energy, let it gather momentum. And then when we think the next thing, it has much more power, it has more direction, it's more declarative, it has more effect. So all action takes place in time, doesn't it? Yeah. But non-action takes place in timelessness. You know, when we're in between remembering and projecting, we're actually in a no-time space. That's what happens in meditation. Lose track of time. It's like it doesn't exist. And that in itself is very healing. And as I said, you can't stay there. It's a starting point, but you can't stay there. So in other words, this open place, as Dr. Dennis said, is the most creative place to be. That is where creation starts, right here in this now moment. And it is potent with possibility, but it is inert. Something has to happen, okay? Something has to happen in there before we move into from now on. And what activates that potential? Well, there's three things. Here's your 1, 2, 3. Number one, a complete acceptance of what was up until now. A complete acceptance of it without judging. See, this is where we get into trouble. We start attributing cause to our past, and then we start blaming and naming and shaming, and sometimes it's us we shame and blame. Or usually it's somebody else or something in our past. That's where we start, we could say, lessening our power. But if you can just look at what was up until now, and you know, everybody in this room has an up until now, right? So just look at it all and just accept it. Remember that old TV show, The Week That Was? Well, this is kind of like that. The life that was, the way it was, up until now, has no meaning whatsoever. Not really. We ascribe meaning to it, but let's not do it in this exercise. Let's see if we can't. Practice this week. See if you can't look at some area of your life and say, well, up until now, and then just accept it as it was without giving it any attribution to what caused it. Okay? So acceptance is more like this. Up until now, my relationships have not worked. Period. That's it. No judgment. Up until now, my relationships haven't worked very well. That's all. Now, you don't need to say it was all good. You don't need to say, but I learned from it. You don't need to say it was a lesson from God. You don't even need to put a positive spin on it. You just accept it. Can you do this? You're looking a little stunned. It's kind of simple. It takes a lot of attention, a lot of intention as well. But it's so worth trying. Okay, so you don't have to ascribe any meaning to it or attribute fault to anybody or yourself or put a positive spin on it. Just accept it. Up until now, that's what it was, over and out. Then sit in the potential. Once you've done that, you've given your mind permission to let it go, to not think about it, okay? You're telling it, that's done. Then you can sit and just rest in this potential that you are, this mind that you are, this consciousness that you are, this being that you are. Just sit there in that presence, gathering momentum, all right? And stay in that non-action for a bit. Just stay there for a bit. Something will arise, and that will lead you into step 2. You cannot sit in your own presence in silence for long without some spiritual knowing arising. Sometimes it's just a feeling of well-being. But if you're attempting to do this exercise, you will know something, and it will probably relate to what you just let go of in the up until now. We're using relationships here as this example. All right, so step 2, you'd start to declare what you know from your deepest spiritual awareness. And you might say something like, I'm a loving being. I'm love in action. I'm an emanation of universal love, which gives rise to all form, all life, all consciousness. Love is my real name. I live in love. I move in love. I love being in love. I love being me. Now that's a spiritual declaration that comes up from the depths of silence, comes up from your quiet time and your willingness to let go of what was up until now regarding relationships. Okay, so when you begin to feel that and you begin to know that it's true, you're ready for step 3, and that's the from now on part. So first we accept, then we know, and then we move into from now on. And here's what would come as a result of that kind of experience of knowing. My relationships are a perfect mirror of my self-awareness. You see, isn't this a little different than making a list about what color eyes they will have? Or whether or not they have a 6-pack or an 8-pack or money in the bank or what card. See, this is a whole different thing. This is letting ourselves have this rich experience that all my relationships are a perfect mirror of my self-awareness. What I am aware of being myself is reflected back to me in my relationships. That's a huge shift in how we usually think about relationships. Then we move into from now on. That's step 3. So, and step 3 is to, as Emerson said, be and not seem. I see Emerson back there, my favorite guy, next to Troward and Dr. Holmes. It said, be and not seem. It means act as if it were so. So if I'm a loving being and I am love in action and I am an emanation of universal love, then how I conduct myself in the world will be a reflection of that. And my relationships will form themselves around that. Make sense? Things form themselves, they coalesce around how we see ourselves. You know, I remember years ago, when I first started coming to one of these centers, before I was a minister, there was a minister who was doing a workshop, and he said, come today to learn the advanced teaching of how to manifest anything you want. And you know what he spoke about? Self-identity, self-esteem, self-regard, self-love. That's where it all is. This is all about self-identity, our whole teaching. It's about redefining who we are. We already know who we are, but our up until nows have given us fodder for adding on to who we are, mistakenly, describing ourselves according to what has happened. But when we sit in the silence and we let that go as much as we can, our natural spiritual awareness begins to rise up. We begin to feel, I know who I am, not who I thought I was. And that self is always present and is never compromised, damaged, nor diminished by any outer experience. You know, in Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on self-reliance, which is my favorite one, he said this, quote, history is an impertinence and an injury, if it be anything more than a parable of my being and becoming. What a great quote, and what a deep truth. Our history is meaningless unless we understand it was a story of our being and becoming, our soul ever unfolding, ever blossoming, ever attempting to reveal more of who it actually is. So in his wisdom, Emerson saw that our past was nothing more than an up until now, and that what we do with it either extends it into the future or dissolves it. I like to say, look at something in your life, something that's working or something that's not working, and ask yourself, do I want this to evolve or dissolve? Because it's up to us. We actually have that power and that choice. We can either have something evolve or we can have it dissolve and let it go back into the nothingness from whence it came. Life is a constant fluid state of that. Evolution and dissolution. It's constantly happening. It's happening in our bodies. It's happening in everything. You know, the Hindus symbolize this as the lotus. Remember the Joseph Campbell? I think Dr. Jim taught this recently. I did too. I love those Joseph Campbell tapes on mythology. And he talks about how in the Hindu belief, the universe is an opening of the lotus. And then it closes. And then it opens again. And life is like that. It's this constant fluid state of becoming and resolving itself into its source and becoming again and resolving itself into. It's true of us. It's not just an abstraction. It's not just true for an enlightened being. It's true of all of us. And that we're always helping that to happen, either evolve or dissolve. So life itself is a word. Life, the word life symbolizes this. It symbolizes what is currently visible and always changing, the up until now. So the choices are, so here we are with our take-homes. We have this choice. I'm going to ask you, would you rather repeat or release? Even if it's good, it can evolve into better. It can exponentially become more and include more good, more good, more good. So it isn't that we're dissatisfied. It's that we understand the nature of reality. It doesn't stay static. It's either evolving or dissolving. Okay, so repeat or release, abdicate our power, or use it intentionally, because it's the same power. When we attribute cause to somebody else, something else, a government, a childhood, an economy, whatever we attribute cause to, we've abdicated our power. Or we can use it intentionally by saying, up until now, I thought everything but me had all the power. And then sit in it and feel the aliveness that's in us. And you know, we didn't put it there. It's there. The aliveness, that spiritual power that we are. That's who we are. And then from now on, I take my power back. And that doesn't mean power over. It means creative power. The power to create a life worth living, worth celebrating. That's what we're all about here. And every one of us has a chance to do that. So repeat or release, give our power away or take it back, allow the past to create the future, or come to a full stop with it, sit idle in the great open space of possibility, and then kick into a higher gear. Take ourselves forward. One of my favorite voices from the ancient past is Marcus Aurelius. I discovered this little book called Meditations, his translations of his words, and this one particularly hit me because it's so relevant. He said, all you have to do is be attentive to the power inside you and to worship it sincerely. To worship it is to keep it from being muddied with turmoil and becoming aimless and dissatisfied with nature, both divine and human. Wow! All you have to do is worship the power inside of you, keep it clear, watch your thoughts, monitor what goes on in there, give it some silence, give it some rest, so that we don't become dissatisfied with humanity or with God, with the source. People tend to give up on things. You know, how many people now are just wringing their hands about what's going on in the world? The news is pretty awful. You know, there's so much violence and poverty and disease and all of that. But that is what has happened up until now. And as we awaken individually and give ourselves an opportunity to really express who we are enlivening the field for everybody. We are making it easier for people to access their own true self. You know, it's the critical mass thing. And we're it. We're part of that. That's what your life is really about, whether we know it or not. We may have been drawn into this teaching because we sensed there was another way to think and live that could be more fruitful or more prosperous or healthier or happier. But really, there's something in here that wants to be a part of the transformation of human consciousness. And it is happening. It is happening right now. So Marcus Aurelius is advising us to be in the space between past and future, to be there in reverence for our power and our own being without any judgment of any kind. And he's not saying no one else is responsible for some of the things that have happened in our life, because we all have an up until now, and there were many people involved, right? There were parents, teachers, and spouses, and friends, and governments. Many people were involved, and they seem to have all the power, but they do not exist in this vast, open space of one-pointed attention. They don't actually exist in you either, except as a concept, except as a memory, except as an idea. They can be released without judgment. How many have found that forgiveness is kind of difficult? There are some things that are pretty darn unforgivable. But compassion can take us where forgiveness leaves off when we try to forgive. Because compassion means you understand that all of us have been somewhat susceptible to the ignorance in the world, religious ignorance and all kinds of ignorance. And so people have done terrible things defending ignorance. But no one's evil. No one is bad. Everyone is a spiritual being. So we can move forward without judgment when we allow ourselves to see that bigger picture and that we're all a part of this transformation, and it is happening. Okay, so they cannot influence us another moment unless we bring them into this moment and abdicate our power to them. The ancients said, whatever it is, this too shall pass. They didn't say how long it would take, but it will pass, because everything is either evolving or dissolving. It cannot stay the same. They didn't say how long it would take, because that's entirely up to us. We have that kind of power. So, what is your up until now? Just think about it for a second. What is your up until now that you really want to move on? You really want to see big shifts, and this is the one. Everybody has it. Let that be your awareness this week. Up until now, up until now. Whatever it is, it's not a fixed reality. There's nothing static in this universe. It's not impossible. Everything is idling or moving, right? So there's no last word on anything. Our life is, as Emerson said, a forever becoming, a forever unfolding. And our previous limitation that we allowed ourselves to believe in can be transmuted into freedom. That's what this teaching is all about. It can be transmuted into freedom, no matter what it was. So even a failed idea has benefits, doesn't it? Even a failed idea has benefits. Even if we just realize we have limited ourselves in that experience, that's the benefit, to realize we limited ourselves. That is such a powerful realization, because conversely, then we have the ability to have an unlimited experience of that same thing, whether it's relationship or our bank account or whatever it was, health. We have the ability to transmute that experience into something with more freedom involved in it, something with more wholeness reflected in it. So Emerson said, we aim higher to hit the mark. And that's why we talk about spiritual mind treatment the way we do. Because when we give ourselves the opportunity to speak spiritual truth in the midst of a limited experience, we have actually raised our mind. You know, when you actually want to aim at something, you don't aim right at it, a little bit higher, right? So that it finds its own level, finds the mark. It's the same thing with consciousness or self-identity. When we raise the ante and we speak of ourselves in spiritual terms, I am the joy of being made manifest. My life is a delight to behold and to live. I love being me. I love my life. I love my body. I love humanity. Those are spiritual ideas. The personality can't go there. But that kind of declaration affects the personality, smooths out those rough edges, allows us to be seen through the personality, through the ego, from that space, from that place. So spiritual mind treatment is, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most ingenious things I've ever come across. One of the most powerful things I've ever discovered, because it is so ingeniously constructed. You must aim higher to change this. We must go to the source. We must go to the top. We must speak above our experience all the time, and then it will find its own level in our life. It will come through our actions, and it keeps evolving. The more we speak higher than our experience, it keeps evolving, and things start becoming easier, more effortless. We start feeling we're in that flow of abundance rather than trying to make money come to us. How many times have we sat down and said, pictured money flowing to us? It kind of doesn't work. We see ourselves expressing it. We see ourselves flowing with abundance, giving it out, being more generous wherever we are, giving what we can, and be joyful about how we are able to pay our bills, and thankful that they give us electricity and credit at the same time. It's pretty wonderful, isn't it? You can light up your house and send them a little check. It's kind of amazing to be grateful and say thank you. Thank you. This is a wonderful service about everything. Okay, so everything overlaps and becomes either more of the same or less of the same. And we've already talked about that. It can be transmuted into a higher version of itself. So the deciding factor is what we put into this now moment, what we put in between up until now and from now on. That's a deciding factor. That's where the creative power is. So here's the 1, 2, 3. Accept, declare, act from the declaration. First, do nothing. Second, know something. Third, act as if it were so, because it is. Now I'm going to invite you to join me. Let's go within. Let's take these ideas into the body. Let's breathe them in. Talk it down into our heart. Talk it down into every cell. Let's know this truth. There's one life being, all life. It is a universal presence everywhere, all at once, all the time, all of it, never withholding, never withdrawing, ever present, moving forward in a constant stream of the invisible to the visible. That is the source of my life. That is the dynamic of my mind. I am one with that universal presence, one with that universal consciousness, one with that universal power that knows how to make all things new. The power that makes all things new. That's God. That's the power that resides in me, personified as me, individualized as me, living as me, being me. That's who I am. I am a perfect emanation of the power that makes all things new. That's what my mind is for. That's why I have imagination. That's why I can release and let go, because I have the power to make all things new. And up until now, I may have forgotten that, but from now on, I remember. I act as though it were so. And so we know today that something's on the move in us. We wouldn't be here if it weren't. We have heard these words because they resonate in us, because they're true, because there's something in us that is ready to move into the most beautiful kind of relationships, ready to be loved and loving and appreciated and respected, ready to have romance and adventure in our life. We are ready to prosper like never before, knowing the power that makes all things new is the source of all supply. And it follows the lead of our self-identity and seeks and finds its level in our lives. I know that we are ready to be a contributor to the world's transformation of consciousness that takes us out of the dark ages of spiritual ignorance into the light of truth. Every human being is God incarnate. Every human being is endowed with this truth and this power. It's never too late, because up until now has no power. And so today we accept in our own way, in our own level, we accept this truth and let it have its way with us. Let this truth move through our body, move through our bank account, move through our relationships, move through everything we're involved in, and evolve and be seen and known as the life we are living. This is what we are grateful for, that it is already happening. That this is a dynamic that is ever on the move, and we're always a part of it, and now we are more aware of it than ever. I'm so grateful. So grateful to know this. We let it be, we let it begin, and we declare it done right now as we say together, and so it is. Yes.